I was out to dinner recently with a handful of really good friends that I used to work with and my brother. And my brother, who was kind of on the outskirts of that group, meaning he didn't know anybody else, sat down at dinner and turned to my friend Brenton and said, "So, what's your whole life story?" And I thought he was joking, but Ben held his ground. He was like, "What's your whole life story?" And Brenton, maybe unsurprisingly, knowing Brenton, gave this amazing response and just literally unpacked. And he's got a really fascinating upbringing and journey and path. And he just laid it all out. And I realized I've known Brenton for many, many years. I really love Brenton. And yet I probably learned 14 new things about him in that response. Point is, to make a long story longer, when I travel around, speak, even in these videos, I don't share a ton of my story or my path. And so I realized that it's a really common question that somebody comes up and says, "What's your story?" Or "How'd you end up doing what you're doing right now?" I had, my stock answer, plug in a cassette tape and let it roll out. But I thought it'd be fun to record a video and actually map my journey based on the pivotal questions or conversations that led me to where I am. Because the questions you ask or the conversations you land yourself in, that is an editable part of your life journey, right? We have the ability to actually talk our way into tomorrow. And so I figured I'll just rewind and tell you how I talked my way into tomorrow or today. So going way back, when I was about this tall, I saw the movie Patch Adams, if you've ever seen it, with Robin Williams, who becomes a doctor to really promote the quality of life over quantity. And I was so enamored in that movie with the way that Patch was able to heal people through human connection. And I had my whole life figured out. I was going to be a doctor. I was thinking pre-med, maybe pediatrician. I had my path figured out. And so I showed up day one of school at Penn State, and I went to, it was actually maybe day 2 of class. It was on my birthday, August 25th. And I went to a chemistry class, and literally on the first day of the class, I was like, "Ooh, this doctor thing might not work out." Although the real way that realization happened, because from the time I was young, I had my path sorted out. And so I left that chemistry class and I went to a calculus class. And there was this professor who actually said right in the beginning, "I really didn't want to teach this class, but I had to. So let's get started." A little bit uninspiring. Uninspiring, and for me at the time, extremely overwhelming. And so as I was walking home, I felt my lip quiver a little bit because I had left, as a first year of college, I had left my family. I was 8 hours away from all the people that I knew and I loved. And I was in this place where nobody knew me, and it was starting over. Nearly every college student or somebody who makes a big move has a journey along those lines, right? So I got back to my dorm room, 312 McKean Hall, and my roommate Ben is sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh, I really need Ben to leave because I'm about to lose it." And Ben walked out the door, and I just broke down. I lost it. And I called up one of my mentors in high school, Eric Tyler, who's since wrote a book called The Best Advice So Far. And he kind of practice some of this best advice with me in the moment. And the question he asked me, right? So I'm unpacking to him once I caught my breath. I am unpacking to him, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I had this path, blah, 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 blah." He's like, "Hold on. There are 168 majors at Penn State. One of them didn't work out. Can you," and his question was, "can you print out your options?" It hadn't even dawned on me, right? So Eric walked me through this process, printing out all these options, circling the ones I was curious about and highlighting the ones I was really, really curious about. And through that, I realized, wait, I still want to be Patch Adams. I just don't want to go to school for 10 years to hold a scalpel. And so the question that I asked myself was, in the movie, Patch Adams, Robin Williams had this way of healing people through human connection. So I asked myself, is that real? Can human connection actually heal people? And so I ended up studying psychology and human services to answer that question. And I was just constantly focused on the brain and what makes people tick. Anyway, skip a couple steps. I'm in an intro to counseling class with Professor Dr. Hayes. And just offhand in the lecture, he mentioned this dream that he had. And there were, 150 students in the class. And I walked up to the front after everybody left and said, "Dr. Hayes, you mentioned this dream offhand. Can I ask a little bit more about that dream?" And he was really struck because I didn't know this at the time, but this was a life-changing, super pivotal dream and perspective shift for Jeff. It turned out that question expanded into a whole series of conversations, and he and I ended up meditating nearly every week all throughout college. So fast forward a little more, being committed to being Patch Adams, I ended up starting a club in college called the Clown Nose Club, which is almost embarrassing to look back on and share now. But at the time, I had so much conviction, and I still think it's a really amazing idea. It has nothing to do with clowns. The concept was inspired by Patch Adams, and the idea and the mission of the organization, the club, was to challenge ourselves and other people to take positive social risks. Anyway, to make a long story very short, that club actually took off, did well, spread to a bunch of colleges, one in Hong Kong, and garnered attention from the president and the vice president of Penn State. And the VP of Student Affairs, Damon, invited me to his office. And so I'm this little undergrad walking into this big fancy old main building. It's all these suits and ties. And he was so compelled by the idea. And as I was walking into the meeting with Damon, because he wanted to do a couple projects and collaborate and find out how he could support, because the news had picked this up at the time. Anyway, as I was walking into Damon's office, these two people, Sam and Lori, were walking out. And we had a 5-minute little chat in the hallway. And just after 5 minutes, Sam looked at me and said, "Would you come work for us?" I don't even know fully what that means. So it turns out Sam and Lori Sam taught the largest race relations class in the country. The two of them co-founded this organization called World in Conversation, which is kind of the center / nonprofit embedded within Penn State University. And the whole mission and idea of the organization is to gather small groups in person of 8 to 10 strangers to talk about really soft, fluffy topics like long-term conflict, politics, gender, sexuality, religion, race, for 90 minutes with the sole purpose of skipping headlines and polarizing, and just to connect with the other. Through that work, got to see military cadets in conversation with people in stereotypically conflict nations like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Iran, Gaza, talking with each other, both about really intense things like somebody's house getting blown up, and about what they had for lunch. And all of a sudden they weren't just the other or this box, they were human beings just connecting and relating. Now I'm gonna predict that one of two things just happened for you. Some of you were like, "Ooh, questions and new people I haven't met." And some of you were like, "Oh, new questions and people." After facilitating 500 conversations there, ended up training facilitators to lead those conversations. It was like a PhD in humanity. It was the path to figure out, perhaps, how to heal people through human connection. Now, to rewind a little bit, the way that I actually met Will Wise, my late co-founder of We and Me and co-author of Ask Powerful Questions, was walking into the facilitator training course that World in Conversation hosted. And I walked in, and here's the next question that really shifted my life. The first words ever spoken out of Will's mouth to me was, "Are you ready? Are you ready for your life to change?" And he asked this in the first day of a course with 30 other students sitting in a circle. And after he asked that question, he actually got up out of his chair, he walked to the door and opened it, and he said, "Because if your answer is no, here's the door." This was Will's intense commitment. This is day one of the opening to a class. And it did, it changed my life. So as I'm going through that class, I'm just eating everything up. And I asked Will at one point, how can I learn more? Where can I do more of this facilitation stuff? And he pointed me toward this other course taught by a guy named Rod Lee, who became a mentor of mine. It was a team development and leadership development facilitation course. Amazing class. Everybody shoved the desks to the back and we did stuff for 3 hours. It's where I picked up many of the library of experiential exercises that live in my brain. And at the end of the semester, I went up to Rod and he asked me, have you thought about grad school? I said, yeah, I've thought about it. And I can't wait to be out of school. No interest. And he said, well, I'll pay for it. What? Now, he did not pay for it, but he hooked me up with this assistantship at this Team and Leadership Development Center at Penn State. And so I got paid to go to grad school while facilitating groups of people. So staff groups, student groups, corporate groups would come in for a half day, a 2 hour, a full day, team building workshop, communication workshop, etc. All very experiential. We'd get out in the woods, like low ropes course kind of stuff. And through all of that, at the end of grad school, I was leading these adventure programs for middle school, high schoolers. And I'd taken them a week-long program out caving, mountain biking, rock climbing. And the first half day of that program was team building. It was like, get this group of strangers to connect with each other, which with a bunch of middle schoolers and high schoolers looked very awkward. It was like, what do I do with my hands? This is just like, there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of effort to get this group to connect. And so being in grad school for learning design, I just asked myself, what could I design and put in between those two people to make that go better? And believe it or not, out of that was born this little deck of We Connect cards that you may be familiar with. I created one cruddy prototype just to use for myself with no intention, 10 years ago, with no intention to create a second one, and ended up launching a Kickstarter for them, getting the first 1,000 decks funded, and now there's 100,000 decks flying around the country and the world in schools and organizations helping to make connection really easy. Not an entrepreneur by trade, very accidentally wound up into this place.
Hey, I'm Chad, and I'm pumped to roll out this project called We Connect Cards to you today. So here are We Connect cards.
Now, I don't remember the exact time, whether it was before or after the cards, but based on all the Clown Nose Club stuff going way back, somebody from a TEDx event reached out and said, would you give a TEDx talk on this idea of positive social risks? Which, if you want to see me when I had hair, Google positive social risks, and you will find a TEDx talk. And this was a little bit closer to how I wound up here, which is after I gave that talk, it was only 6 minutes long. I got off stage and somebody came up and said, that was really, really amazing. My company is having this retreat in 3 months. How much do you charge to speak? Google, like, what do you mean, how much do I charge? I don't know, is that a thing? And I knew it was kind of a thing because Rod and Will had both been doing consulting and facilitation professionally outside of their instructor roles at the university. And so they had brought me along and ushered me into this world a bit. But that was the aha that, there might actually be a path for me in here. And while this certainly isn't the end of the story, if you fast forward 5 years of like basically stumbling and fumbling my way through starting a business and starting a practice and figuring out what that is and getting clear on who I'm serving and how I'm serving them, Will and I, when we wrote Ask Powerful Questions, we wrote it because we thought the world needed it. And the book went off and did quite well. And so I get invited to speak all over the place and facilitate using these cards. And one of the questions people ask me often is, how do you maintain your energy? How do you stay up when you're working with a group? And this connects to the last question that I want to share with you in my own story and journey, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. I went on this middle of the nowhere kayak camping trip, semi-silent retreat to just disconnect from the world, reconnect with yourself and some higher power being, if you believe in that. And one of the questions that the guide, who was my father, handed out to people for one of the 6-hour silent floats, paddles down the river, had a series of questions on it. And one of the questions was essentially, why do you exist? And this is the question I want to end with. Very much to my surprise, and this is a much longer story over a coffee or a beer, not a video. Much to my surprise, I got an answer that was really clear, and it was still one of the most intense experiences of my life. I'm just gonna have to leave you with that curiosity, but the answer was, Chad, you exist on this planet to gently eradicate small talk. And so that is how I maintain my energy. Have an awesome day.